On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina. All right, everybody, I'm here with Jordan Brown of the Tampa Bay Rays organization. Jordan, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
My name is Jordan Brown. I'm with the Tampa Bay Rays organization. Most recently with the Princeton Rays, which is the rookie level affiliate for us in the Appalachian League. Do you want me to go into kind of how I got started, or?
Yeah, sure. Go in from maybe from college, and then any experiences you had along the way that kind of brought you to where you're at now.
All right, so undergrad, I went to the University of Hartford. I actually ran track and field there for 4 years, competed for 3. And during that time, that's kind of when I started asking questions about our strength and conditioning program, mostly because I didn't understand it. We did more of kind of a hit type of style and more just strength-based stuff. So I always wondered why we never did, cleans or any type of Olympic-based movement. And kind of as time went on, during my junior year, I found out my sprinting coach graduated from Springfield College, and he had his master's degree in the strength and conditioning program over there. So I would always go to him for questions and, talk about, strength and conditioning related stuff, just to get a better understanding of why we were doing what we were doing. And during that time, eventually I found out that there were probably 6 or 7 other people who had worked at or went to Springfield College. So that kind of got me really intrigued about their program. I went to the open house there and, decided that I was going to apply there and try and get into that program. I knew I wanted to be involved in sports. I just didn't know in what capacity. But after a while, I figured out all the questions I was asking of why we were doing certain things. Why was I always getting hurt? That kind of led me down that path. So fast forward in the fall of 2012, I went to Springfield College. And that was the place where I really learned how much I didn't know. And quite frankly, how dumb I was in regards to training and everything. So it was really good to be surrounded by a bunch of A, like-minded people, and B, also people who had different experiences, whether they had done, 3 internships or if they were a GA with a couple internships under their belt, to be able to learn from them every day and then to go through that program from not only a classroom standpoint but a practical standpoint, I think better prepared me to kind of launch me into my career. I was able to intern at the University of Georgia with their Olympic staff. I went to Boston University, Vanderbilt football in 2014. And then I interned at TCU and worked with all their sports down there in the spring of 15, and then went with the Cincinnati Bengals during their 2015 preseason. And that was mainly to work on learning about the Stat Sports GPS system. But I did get to work with the strength and conditioning side of things also. And then I haven't graduated from Springfield yet. All my classes are done. But after I finished all my classes, that's when I got hired by the St. Louis Cardinals. And that was probably one of the coolest experiences I had with pro baseball. Spent 2 years there. First year I was with the rookie ball level Johnson City Cardinals, and then the second year I went to State College in the New York Penn League. After that season in 2017, I left and eventually went to Campbell University. And my coordinator from the Cardinals, Jim Malone, actually had brought me down there because he was the director at the time. So while I was there, I worked with football, baseball, and women's lacrosse. And then he left in January of 2018, and we had a new director there. So I picked up track and field, was eventually let go in May. And during that gap in time, that was kind of like the soul searching period and kind of figuring out, what I needed to do better, and how I could find different ways to improve so that I could make myself of a more, I guess, reputable strength coach. So in the meantime, while I was, interviewing and, reading and trying to just, bring up some knowledge and everything like that, I was actually selling cars. And then how I got to the Tampa Bay Rays was actually really weird and kind of series of events. But I was actually scrolling through Twitter one day, and they had posted a video of their off-season camps that they were doing. And they were doing a lot of cool things, like they were doing wicket drills. They were doing the dial running that, Altus, had been posting videos about and everything like that. And then obviously doing some weight training and things like that, testing. So, I liked the video, just innocuous, nothing really thought about it. And then the next day they had posted a job opening. So I was like, okay, that's weird, but, I'll apply. Whatever. I think a few days after that, I had an interview set up with Pat Trainer, who's our coordinator, and we spoke probably for about 45 minutes. And it was funny because I was actually working that day, so I had to sneak around the back of the dealership to try and have this interview while I was supposed to be working. So it's kind of funny looking back on it. And then maybe like 2 days later, I got the call and, said, hey, I would like to bring you aboard. Do you think you can come down next week? And I said there'd be no trouble in doing that at all. So I was done selling cars and, packed my stuff up and headed down to Florida to spring training. And that's kind of all she wrote. So it's kind of a funny series of events and funny how things led to that moment. So.
Yeah, a couple things from that. Number one, I know Pat. I've had him on the interview. He is really good, and I remember that exact period in time of like that video was posted, and I was like, "Damn, Pat's got him doing some good stuff." And then the job was posted, and I was like, "He probably did that on purpose, just put that little like recruiting video out, and then people saw it, and they're like, now we got a job. We're gonna have a ton of applicants." And then the other thing is just the perseverance in your story, man, is awesome. Like, I knew you had done a little bit of college football at Campbell. I knew you had been with the Cardinals, but I didn't know all the internships before that and the track background and everything. And especially I didn't know the car salesman stuff. So kudos to you, man. If you really want to do something, like, you'll find ways to do it. I'm fully on board with that, and I really, really respect the hustle and just the drive to do what you wanted to do.
The car dealership thing actually kind of helped me a little bit because, yeah, obviously it's a way different, career field and everything like that. But you learn how to talk to and deal with people on a day-to-day basis. You see so many different people, and you have to learn how to talk on the phone and different word tracking, obviously, to get people to go a certain way. But it's a lot of patience that you have to have because you never know the kind of day people are having. Some people could be having a really great day, and they're one of the best people you can work with and talk to and build a relationship with. And some people want nothing to do with you, and they'll curse you out over the phone, and you kind of just have to bite your lip and, okay, well, on to the next. And, so that taught me a little bit of, not only toughness, but to just have that ability to just kind of say, okay, forget it and move on. So.
Yeah, I've mentioned this on the podcast. I did like 4 years at Big Lots in the furniture department, selling furniture, building furniture, and it's the same thing for me, man. Like, it took some of my soul, but at the same time, like, I learned how you know what I'm talking about, but yeah, you learn how to talk to people.
Those warehouse jobs will definitely take your soul. When I was with TCU, I actually worked 2 jobs at one point. I was valeting cars, and I worked at the Dickies warehouse. And I probably lasted maybe like 2 weeks at the Dickies warehouse. Like, it was the worst thing ever. And I was just like, man, I'm not doing this. I can't. It's one of those things where I was like, okay with quitting. I was like, nah, I'm not doing this. Like,
It tests you, man.
Yeah.
So we're talking off camera about some good stories that you have in professional baseball. So I want to hear your best professional baseball story that you have. What memory sticks out the most to you so far?
Man, honestly, I think the best story was definitely when I was with Johnson City in 2016, and it's really that whole. Actually, I take that back. So I was known as the ball magnet in Johnson City, and the way that started was I was actually playing catch with my manager and our pitching coach. So we're just playing catch, and my manager's balls do these weird like things. So like you have to really pay attention. And he threw one, and I was looking at it coming in my glove, and I didn't really see it kind of trend up, so it went off my glove and hit me in the face. And he felt really bad about it, and I kind of swore it and was like, yeah, man, it's whatever. The next day was his birthday, and he's playing catch with our athletic trainer. Now I'm probably like 20, 30 feet away from our athletic trainer, like out of the way. This guy manages to throw one, athletic trainer misses it, and he dots me up right in the shin. I'm like, what are you doing, man? And so then maybe a week or two later, we're in the dugout during the game. We've already had a bat fly into our dugout, so everyone's kind of on alert. Well, one of our batters, he fouls a ball off, and it's coming beelining straight towards me, and I was like, I don't have any time to get out of the way. So I tried to catch it, and it hit me square in the chest. And you could see my manager and pitching coach like going down like this, just laughing at me. And our catcher comes in and he goes, "Oh yeah, man, the umpire, I saw it. He was like, great hands." And I was like, man, whatever. Like, I don't care. So I probably got hit by about like 6 or 7 balls that whole season, and they just thought it was funny the whole time. So those are one of my favorite moments, honestly.
Was the foul ball in Johnson City in the dugouts there, or were you on the road?
Yeah, it was in Johnson City.
Those dugouts are so tough.
Like,
yeah,
you don't really got anywhere to go. Yeah.
Yeah, you're pretty much right in the line of fire there. You don't, you don't have a chance. No, that's awesome, man. So, what do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing?
I don't know if it's a belief or not, but I see a lot of people on the nutrition side of things kind of bashing, the keto diets and everything like that. And, there's obviously these new trends like carnivore and, paleo and things like that. I actually tried carnivore for a month last year. And to be honest, I felt really good on it. And I'm sure somebody on this podcast is probably rolling their eyes like, well, this is the dumbest strength coach I've ever listened to. I'm like, hey, that's fine. The whole point is just to try it. It's not something that I would do 24/7. The main reason that I tried it, one, because I wanted to see, can I really eat meat for 30 days and not, get sick of it or, have something adverse happen to me. And two, I'm type 1 diabetic, so I wanted to see what a keto diet would actually do with my blood sugars and everything like that. So that was something I wanted to try and experiment with. So I'm sure, most, if not all, strength coaches would probably be like, that's the dumbest diet ever, but it's just something I wanted to try. I read it about. I do follow some of those people on Twitter, but I follow a wide range of people also. I like following people who have different views from me, and I think that kind of helps you keep an open mind to things. But, at the same time, you treat it with a grain of salt, and if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, then you just throw it out and go to something else.
Yeah, Mark Bell is one of those guys who promotes the carnivore diet on his social media. I don't know if you follow him or not, but it always looks good. It always looks good. He's like got a great steak and eggs, and then he's got burgers. I'm like, damn, I might need to try this.
It's one of the best foods you could ever have, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like you said, in all seriousness, is in my mind, we're guinea pigs. So you might as well try things because the reality is athletes are going to see it. If we see it on social media, athletes are going to see it on social media.
100%.
And they're going to ask you about it and say, hey, what do you got on this? Hey, I want to try this. And you can give them all the reasons not to, but at the end of the day, they're probably not going to listen to you. They're going to try it anyway. So if you've at least tried it, you can hey, when I did this, I felt this. I felt sluggish. I felt great. I was tired at this point. My lifts went up. My lifts went down. You can give them more information so that when they do try it, they're going to try it inevitably. At least they are a little more educated on it.
Yeah, and at least they trust you enough to come and ask you. That first week I did it was horrible. I was cramping. It was terrible. But after like 2-3 weeks, I started to actually feel pretty good on it. So, but yeah, just a little experiment. It was fun.
Yeah, the body is an amazing adapter. I tried intermittent fasting last year because our manager kept hounding me about it. And I was like, you know what? I'll do it for a month, and then I'll let you know if it's good or not. And I'll give you some feedback. I did it for a month, and I told him about it. He's like, all right, I'm going to try it. And now every time I see him, he's like, dude, my fasting's been going great. I feel good, like this, that. Thanks for doing it. Like, that's all it was. It's just, here, I'll be the guinea pig, so if it is terrible, you don't have to go through that. I'll go through it because that's what I'm here for. So, so what do you believe? What do you think makes a strength and conditioning coach successful? Maybe in general, and then more specifically in professional baseball.
In general, I think communication is always probably going to be the most important to me, and partly because, and I think that mostly because one, I've been really successful at it, and two, I've also drop dead on my face on it. People all communicate in different ways and have their different nuances in how they communicate. So I think it's important for strength conditioning coaches and even, sport coaches or anything, pick up on those nuances and really, really capitalize on them. The faster you can pick up on those nuances, I think the better communicator you'll become. And there won't be, not to say there won't be any issues, but, there may be a mishap here and there. But if you're being effective at communicating, and one mistake happens, that's okay, because then you can go to that person, you can figure out what happened, and then you can kind of keep the engine rolling. So another thing, practice what you preach. I know a lot of strength coaches kind of get caught up in the training aspect of things, and sometimes I have to kind of remind myself I'm not the same 21-year-old when I was training. And people might not like this. Like, I do lift weights, I'll do some cardio here and there, and I do it enough so that I feel good and I move well, and I'm able to also show my athletes how to perform those lifts. I think that's the most important thing. Yes, I do want to be healthy and want to be able to be strong and everything like that, but at the same time, I'm not competing in anything. So I'm not trying to lift the heaviest weight 24/7. Every now and then I like to go heavy, and then I need to back off a little bit. But I think knowing what you're doing and knowing how to teach it, those are probably the most important things, I think, for a strength coach. Going specifically into baseball, I don't think you need to be a baseball expert. I think the one thing you do need to know is you need to know where to be. I think sometimes we do get caught up in the monotony of baseball. But when you're with your manager and it's your actual season, read the schedule. That's probably one of the most important things. That way you can get a sense of, okay, what time do I need to be here? What time are players reporting? What time do I need to set up my cones? And make sure everything is ready so that when we go outside, we're all ready to go, line up and stretch and get the day rolling. Another thing, going back to the communication thing, is figure out what your manager and your pitching coaches want in terms of conditioning and just general day-to-day stuff. They might not know everything that you're doing and they may not understand everything that you need to do from your side of things. So, for example, like this year, like my manager, we would always, come in and we would try and talk through like, hey, what are you planning on doing today? Can I get these guys to run bases? And I remember he told me, he's like, you need to do enough to make sure that you don't get a phone call, which is true. I mean, you want to make sure you're doing your job, and you want to go above and beyond that as well. So we would always talk about when we can run guys, specifically position players. I generally don't like to run them too much because they play every day to begin with. So maybe we'll run bases once a week, or we'll get 2 conditioning sessions in twice a week. Pitching wise, it's important to know the rotation for your starting pitchers so you can tailor their running around that. And also when they're going to be up that night. And that helps just with the lifting aspect also, because sometimes guys don't want to lift before they pitch. And I think it depends on the person. Some guys are okay with it. Some guys aren't. You try and work around that. And I've done it both ways, where I kind of didn't care if they were pitching that night because we were lifting at 10 a.m., so everyone's going to lift. And then I've done it another way where I was a little bit more, courteous to them. And I said, hey, I'm not going to lift you today, but you're going to lift tomorrow after you throw in the game today. So it's all dependent on what the coach wants. You want to try and work with them as much as possible and communicate with them. And I think that's the start of that foundation of being successful in pro baseball.
Yeah, a few things stand out there for me. First is just being honest about sometimes your communication is effective and sometimes it's not. Like you said, we've all had those situations where we were great and we all had the situation where we fell on our face. But being able to evaluate both sides of, hey, what did I do really good in this conversation? Or, hey, what did I absolutely drop the ball on here? Is only going to make you a more effective communicator moving forward. Second, knowing where you need to be is huge in baseball. And for me, like you said, if you know the schedule and you know when your cones are out, the point of that is just when guys get there, things are ready. The weight room is set up, the cones are set up, stretch is set up so that they're not waiting on you. When they get there, they need to, they want to go. They don't want to wait at all. They don't want you to be looking at your paper saying, oh, okay, what running do we have? Oh, I got to set these cones up. Have the cones set up ahead of time so that it flows better. The less downtime for a baseball player on the field, it just feels better to them, I think. They're like, oh, okay, we're just working. I mean, in the clubhouse is a different thing. They'll play their cards. They'll, look at their phones, whatever. They'll have that downtime. Yeah. But when they're on the field, the more they're working and moving, the less they're complaining, from what I've found.
And honestly, the worst thing for a strength coach to do is make sure your lines aren't straight, because then you'll never hear the end of it.
They have to be straight. And then honestly,
on a baseball field, that's the hardest thing to do. So
you always end up with the cones curved or whatever, and you got to go back and forth and set everything up. But no, and then the last thing, man, is knowing the manager and the pitching coach especially. I found this year for me a lot of my interactions were with the bullpen. Just between stretch and throwing program and the conditioning and everything, and just having that plan already in place with your pitching coach so that the pitching coach isn't coming over and he's like, wait a minute, we didn't talk about this, or you're doing something different than we talked about. And
exactly.
So for me, I would lift with our pitching coach, every single day. He'd come in, hey, what do we got for a lift? And then during the lift, we would chat what we got during the day. And then everything would run smooth. And then after our lift was done, just hop in the manager's office. It's right next to the weight room for me. And just, hey, what are we looking at today schedule-wise? Just so you can be effective and keep that downtime to a minimum. Those are all really, really good points for baseball specifically.
I think another good thing is if you guys don't have your own weight room as a professional baseball strength coach and you are going to a gym or anything, just make sure your scheduling makes sense. I know for some people, they like to just bring their whole team in there. For me, I'm not one of those people. I can't stand it. I hate it. I can't watch everybody. So what I'll do is I'll split it up, position players and pitchers. So position players will go on one day, and I'll split them in half so that I have about 6 or 7 guys in one group and then 6 and 7 in another one. And then the pitchers, it's the same way. And I schedule them 45-minute sessions. Usually it takes a little bit longer, but, it is what it is. But it's just better for me to be able to watch 7 people instead of watching 15 people. I can see what everyone's doing. I can go up to somebody individually and talk them through something. And if I know those guys are kind of, autonomous with everything they need to do and they don't really need too much help, I can just watch for them or facilitate and make sure I move them along and make sure they're getting in and getting out in a timely manner so that they can go back to their room, they can change, shower, eat, and then when they get to the ballpark, they're ready to go.
Yeah, and especially with the younger guys, I think that really makes sense, just being able to have eyes and the less guys that are there. And when you get all those young guys together and there's 15, 20 guys at a public gym in addition to the regular people that are there, next thing you know, you got 5 guys that have wandered off and they're sitting on their phone
Yeah,
in the corner, or you can't find them, or oh yeah, I did the lift, and no, you didn't. Yeah, I did. I promise. It's
exactly.
so yeah, that's good
So,
advice, man. Do you have any other advice for strength coaches in the field? Maybe young coaches looking to get in, or even older coaches that have been around. Just any advice you want to share in addition to what you've already shared?
if you know somebody, just try and talk to them and talk shop with them. I think is one thing. Especially if you want to get into baseball, try and find someone or get somebody to put you in touch with a baseball strength coach, just so that you can kind of get the ins and outs of it. I think that's important. So you understand the nuances of pro baseball and how certain things are the way they are. Yeah, things are going to be different from organization to organization, and then even within that, from level to level. But I think if you can get a general idea of, okay, this is how spring training operates. All right, well, if I'm on a short season team, this is how, extended spring training is going to operate. All right, I'm in season. This is how the day-to-day stuff is going to operate. And then if you make it to the playoffs, great. Like, that's just an added bonus of experience that you get. And then I think understanding the different cultures between the Latin players and the American players, I think, is a huge thing that coaches need to understand. My Spanish is not the best, but you know what? I do try and make attempts to speak to those guys in Spanish as much as I can, even if it's just a greeting of a hello and hey, how's everything going? That does mean a lot to those guys. If you kind of just never speak to them in Spanish, they might think you don't care, and they'll be a little bit more resistant to you. Um, and I think I had more fun on this process just because, like, I know I don't know that much Spanish, but I did try and speak with them, and I was able to joke around with them. And I think the more comfortable they get with you, they end up surprising you and how much English they actually do know. And so it's important to not only get them to trust you, but also get them comfortable enough where they can speak English. And if they make a mistake, that's okay. As long as you get the gist of what they're saying, they appreciate that. And even the same way, if you're trying to speak Spanish to them, they'll let you know if you said something wrong and they'll correct you on it. So it's always a great way to kind of bridge the gap and facilitate those relationships and cultivate them and make them grow and everything like that. So.
Yeah, the Spanish is such a huge part of baseball, especially at the younger levels. We were talking, before we started, like those guys it's a big culture shock for them, and some of them have been, fresh out of their country where very few people speak English. It's just Spanish all the time. And now it's the exact opposite. It's just English speakers all around them. And I mean, in addition to learning the baseball etiquette and the culture of the United States and everything, there's just so much that goes into their life here that if you just spend that little bit of extra time trying to learn some Spanish and talk to them in Spanish, like it goes so far for them. It really does.
Yeah, and be patient with them too. Like, they, like I said, they don't understand. Sometimes when they come over, they don't understand all the nuances of pro baseball in the States. So, if they do something wrong, sometimes they generally don't know. There's always, for every guy, whether American or Latin, there's always a guy that's always going to be the causing the problems or whatever, and you got to kind of, deal with that situation. But for some of them that generally don't know, try and pull them aside if they don't speak English very well, get a translator, so that way that person can kind of reiterate and, get them to understand where we're coming from when we do speak to them and everything like that, just so that they don't resent you. Because sometimes if you do, talk in a stern tone, they might not be used to that, and they might feel like you're challenging them or something like that. So I think it's just important to make sure that they really do understand where you're coming from, and that you do want them to be successful and be able to move up and everything like that. So.
For sure, man. Yeah, really good advice, and it's definitely relevant for any coach in baseball who wants to get in, or even who's been around for a while. Just cleaning up the Spanish helps a lot. So, do you have any continuing ed resources for us? Maybe books you'd recommend, or podcasts you listen to, seminars you'd like to attend this off season? Just any sort of continuing ed for us?
I will tell you my favorite website is Simply Faster. Carl Val's usually on that website a lot. Zach Decken has been on it fairly recently. So I usually will always look for any type of article. It doesn't even necessarily have to be baseball. A lot of sprinting stuff is on there. They do a lot of articles on like EMG studies, how to different, I guess career advice for strength coaches. There's a wide range of topics on there. It's almost like a peer-reviewed elite FTS. That's the way I like to think of it. So I really enjoy that website. Books-wise, one book that I would recommend, especially if you're going to be new into pro baseball, is The First 90 Days by Michael Watkins. And that book really talks about how to adapt yourself into a culture in the first 90 days so that you don't make a mistake or rub somebody the wrong way. And it even talks about if you've gotten a promotion within an organization, so you're still with that organization, but it's a entirely new title and new position. And it tells you how to kind of transition into that also. And I mainly read that one when I was let go from Campbell and, selling cars. And I read that just so that I knew how I could maneuver a little bit better when I got hired by whoever it was going to be, whatever that next team was going to be. And it just so happened to be Tampa. And that really kind of helped me transition to everything. So from little things to like making sure you say hello to people and smile. And I got that also from selling cars and everything like that. And just introducing yourself and, small talk and things like that. Just making yourself present and making people aware that you're there is a big takeaway. Another one, Make Your Bed by Admiral William McRaven. And that one talks about different little life lessons that you can take and just basically make your day overall better, whether it's tackling an objective and getting it done and moving it out of the way, or how you operate within different challenges. So that was something I read during spring training, and it always starts off with a story back when he was in the military. I think there was one where he had a parachute accident and literally broke tons of bones in his body and ripped like his muscles off his pelvis. So he was in the hospital for quite some time, and basically talks about how he almost felt like giving up, but he pushed through his physical therapy and things like that. So there's always a story in the beginning of it, and then it kind of goes on to that lesson. It's a fairly short book. It's something you can honestly knock out in probably like a week or two if you really wanted to. I just read one chapter a night, so I'm not really sure how long that took me, but it's a pretty short read, but a pretty good one. Podcast-wise, occasionally go listen to Jocko Willink, and kind of along the same lines, he has a different format every podcast. So sometimes he'll read a book, which some of them are the most interesting, honestly. Sometimes he does Q&A from people who will send in questions, and they, have different problems like work problems or training, relationship issues, things like that. And he goes through those, and he'll talk about, different ways to kind of take on those problems and everything like that. So those are always fun to listen to. Jay Ferrugia with the Renegade Radio podcast, and he has a wide variety of topics that he talks about on there, whether it's, fitness training, nutrition, business, like things of that nature. Like, so you can get something different every podcast. Me, I usually kind of skip around and see like, oh, that one looks interesting, and I'll listen to that. So that's kind of how I go about it. The Central Virginia Sports Performance Podcast, I'll usually listen to that one by Jay DeMayo. And usually that's just a whole bunch of different strength coaches from around the country that will talk about a wide variety of topics. I've had a couple friends on that podcast too, so I'll usually always tune into those. And then this is kind of a I guess, an out of the box one. It's not a podcast or anything, but it's a YouTube channel. It's called Whiteboard Finance. I've been really getting into financial stuff lately, and he has different videos on there. Whether it's how to buy a car or talking about like home mortgages, IRAs versus 401ks, and things like that. So I think those are things that are actually pretty important to know about, especially in a field where depending on where you are, the pay is not always the greatest. Not saying that for myself, but for college and other pro organizations and even some private sector places, like you really need to pay attention to your finances and make sure you're saving, just in case something that happens to you or your family, for God forbid. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of what I would recommend.
Yeah, I started this new thing at the beginning of this off season where I'm just printing one article a day, reading it, writing notes, putting it in a binder, and I keep going back to Simply Faster. They just have so much good stuff on that website.
They really do.
It's all like, I like how you described it, peer reviewed elite FTS. It's all like really top level coaches putting out their thoughts and just putting it out there for the world. And hey, if you disagree, I don't really care. Like, let's talk about it. And I keep going back to that. And then the Whiteboard Finance, I'm going to definitely check into that one because that's so relevant. It's something that you don't learn in school, is that kind of stuff. And that's like the real life stuff that you need. But hey, I'd like to do a lightning round with you. If you have time, it's just 4 quick questions, as long or as short answers as you'd like. You got time for me?
Yeah.
All right, first one. Biggest influence in the field of strength and conditioning. Who is it?
Oh, man. It honestly, it's definitely Jim Malone. He's with the Pittsburgh Pirates right now. He was the guy that hired me with St. Louis. And he also brought me down to Campbell. And, he he comes off like this really, really like scary dude, and he's really not. Like, you could definitely talk to him about anything. And he really helped me during that time when I was out of work and everything, and just talking to him and asking for advice. And he was one finding jobs to apply to for me while I was doing it at the same time. So he's definitely somebody in my life that I look up to as a mentor, and someone who I also know is just going to give it to me straight and not going to sugarcoat shit. He's not that type of person, and he'll be honest with you, and but he does care. And the one way I did know about that, when I was with the Cardinals, I was literally there maybe a week. It was the first week, and I found out one of my friends had died in a car accident. So I was kind of shook about that, and he brought me over kind of in a private area, and he gave me a hug, and he's like, "Look, if that's family, you need to go home. Don't worry about this. We got enough people here to kind of take care of everything. Like, if you need to go home and handle that." And I really appreciated that from him. And, he definitely, separates himself from a lot of other coaches, and it means a lot. So he's definitely one of my biggest mentors and probably one of my biggest influences in this field.
He's a Buffalo guy, man. We're rough around the edges. We'll shoot it straight with you, but we will literally give you the shirt off our back in a snowstorm. It does not matter. Like, that's the Buffalo mentality, man. One piece of equipment to train with, what would you choose?
Barbell.
Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
Professionally, I would say being a part of that Appy League team in Johnson City and winning the championship. That was just I feel like we were the ragtag group of the organization, honestly. We had the youngest staff, and we had this like weird group of players, man. We had some weirdos on that team, but they were good people. So it was really sweet to win that. Personally, I would say honestly getting this job with Tampa Bay, just because the time off. I had like 8 or 9 months off from coaching, and I was itching to get back. And it was one of those things where kind of every now and then it creeps into your mind, like, am I going to be back in this field, or am I going to be stuck here selling cars for however long? So when I got that, it was a huge weight kind of lifted off my shoulders, and it's been a really great year. So I've been enjoying it.
Last one. Any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose? Probably not car salesman.
Probably not. Oh man, I got some stories there, man, but that's miserable. Man, I don't know. That's bad too. I don't know. I would probably say real estate. That's probably something I would want to kind of dabble into if I could.
Gotcha. All right, my man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, spending some time with me, sharing some laughs and some good stories. If the listeners want to get in touch, where can we get more? Are you on social media, or is there a better place to get in touch with you?
I am on Twitter. That's usually the one I frequent the most. I don't do Instagram or Snapchat. That's just one too many profiles for me. So Twitter, I'm at Jordan_B28. It's just my name, Jordan Brown, on there. You can follow me there, and that's pretty much it, man.
Cool. Well, like I said, I appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll be talking soon.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, that concludes this episode with Jordan. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was really cool to hear his story of perseverance and how it got him to where he is today. 3 things that I took from Jordan in this episode: try things yourself, practice what you preach, and find ways to pick up on others' nuances to help improve your communication skills. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.